I thought I'll do another experiment, this time with documenting process. Some of you watching this may have listened or watched me recite my poetry. If you haven't, I invite you to check it out on YouTube. It's called Poetry in the Pandemic. It's under my channel, Oliver Damien. And there's 20 poems right at the moment, so I hope you enjoy that. Now what's happening is I'm feeling the impulse to birth a new set of poetry. So I thought I'd document the process of how it happens. In design school, I learned the value of documenting process and reflecting on process. Like, you can have the most beautiful, excellent rendered 3D design, the final product. That's good, that's interesting. But also equally interesting and valuable is looking at how one gets there. How does one get to the final design, the final product? So that's what I'm doing in this live stream. So I call it process live stream. So it will be different kinds of creative pursuits I'm doing, and I'm going to share with you my process. So I'm going to start with poetry. So it's really hard to really define it. It's in a way making poetry itself. The end product is undefinable. What more the process? So there are many ways it comes. It's not a controlled thing. It comes to me in random times. So what I do is I carry this small notebook from Muji and a fountain pen, and whenever inspiration strikes, I write it. And it can come from anywhere. Like, it could come from me seeing a sunset, eating food, reading something, experiencing something. Or it can just come randomly when I'm bored or I'm not doing anything in particular. So to me, I nourish my creative process in the same way that people who take care of plants nourish the soil. So I keep my soil of creativity alive by reading lots of stuff, watching lots of things, talking to a lot of different people, doing a lot of activities, dancing, walking, it's being fully alive as much as I can. And that will be like the soil where these things would come out from, like poetry, designs. Perhaps I'm writing a book as well, but for now let's focus on the poetry. So I've started to write one poetry. So what I'll do is at certain times I'll write it and then I'll write it again. So it's not linear, it's a circumambulation on the same topic. So with this one, it's really the title I'm thinking about is incarceration, and it came from the word because it's in the air around here in Australia about death in custody, and there's a lot of reckoning happening with the first peoples of Australia, the indigenous knowing. I've been listening to a lot of Tyson Yunkaporta's work. I read his book Sand Talk, so it's all percolating there. So some of the things I wrote in certain times in my life seem to be on that topic. So perhaps this series will be about that. So I've written the handwritten random thoughts. Now I'm going to show you the next step in the process is for me to type it into the computer, and then I play with that. And in the next video I'll show you maybe how I would typeset it if I was gonna make a book out of it. So let me just prop this up so I could, and I'll also show you the tools I use. So here we go. So this is my editor. I mean, it's another thing I'm doing is I'm trying to be very proficient in Emacs, so that this is where I'll write my programs, and this is also where I'll write my things like text, creative text. It will also be the same software I'm gonna use to code my website, for example. So for this particular live stream, this will just be writing text for now. So let's dive in. So a lot of Emacs is really about being proficient in the keyboard. So when starting with Emacs, you first open the file. So I'll put it under the projects directory, and I'm just gonna call it incarceration, and I'm gonna keep it simple. I'm not gonna use the versioning system yet. I'm just gonna write it as incarceration -1, and then when I revise it, I'll just do -2, 3, 4, so on. In the future, we might use Git and other versioning systems. So I'll do that, and then I'll confirm, and I'll just have one window open, and then I'll just write it. So incarceration. So I'll just remove the earphones because I'm not listening to anything. Let me just check if the sound is working. Yeah, it seems to be working. So now I'm gonna look through what I've written, and sometimes I write the same thing a few times. I'm just gonna pick out the ones I like and then put it together. So let's see. I might speak it as well, because poetry is really meant to be spoken. So I wrote in cars. I'm trying to this all started with the play of words. So incarceration, there is a word there called in cars. So in cars we travel, like atomic islands. Atomic islands, and then bubbles of separation, bubbles of separation. All right, let me see. So it's bubbles of islands of separation and antiseptic bubbles. That's it. So antiseptic bubbles, and then travel in atomic islands separation, antiseptic bubbles, zipping from one point in time, space, from one point in time in space to another. So in cars we travel, like atomic islands of separation, antiseptic bubbles zipping from one point in time in space to another. And then a margin of thin metallic safety, perceived safety. So this is the first draft. It may sound clunky now, and then we'll just revise it. Towards a linear teleology. It's a bit abstract now, so maybe in the next draft I'll have more images, but this is just putting the ideas there and let it percolate, let it do its thing. But the thing for me is just to put it down there, and then I could change it later. Towards a linear teleology of an efficient future. Alright. Haha, I like this. While we slowly die. See, I'm repeating metallic plastic. Metallic plastic of waste that do not decay and reintegrate back. Reintegrate back to the life they came from. So there's that idea of cars being like separating us. So it's still raw, but I'll get back to that. Now with the atomic islands, I might separate this into two, but for now there's another separate vein going with atomic islands that it's like we're separated, but once in a while we collide. Only to once in a while collide in a fit of pent up, uncontrolled, pent up rage. Now that thing I wrote, image comes to me. I forgot this. It's a movie about LA people living their different lives, and then there's an accident, and they manage to, like, white people, black people, rich people, and poor people manage to mix because of the car crash. I forgot the title, but that's the idea that we're creating separation because we want to be separate in our cars. We have our own teleology, we have our own goal, separate from everyone. So that's the opening of this poem. And then I will go back to what it was like before this industrial car society that we created. So I might beef that up later, but that's the first part of it. So this is now going back to the indigenous knowing. So I wrote on another day, we used to walk the land, a living dialogue, with everything in the web of time, space, and living ideas. We are embedded in. We felt the seasons, each subtle tiny changes, each subtle tiny change, and that which persists. persist. So sometimes I can't even understand my own writing, but that's fine. Because I'm also trying to write with my left hand. So as you can see, that is my left hand writing. This is my right hand writing. So they're quite different. So I'm still getting used to reading my left hand writing. So we felt the seasons, each subtle tiny change, and that which persists amidst an embarrassment of riches. An embarrassment. Can I spell? Maybe not, but it's okay. So led to believe in the myth of progress, we serrate ourselves. So again, this is so the title is incarceration. There's another, so there's in cars, we've done that. Now the other word that comes from that is serration, when a thing is serrated. So I'm gonna use poetic license. Instead of serration, I'll make it a verb. We serrate ourselves with sharp knives. Of narcissistic, reductionist comparison against colonizing norm. So there's that. I'm sure people who are well versed in postmodernism and post-colonialism will understand what I'm saying with that. So divorced from our participation in existence, we suffer an easy prey for manipulation. Well, I guess I just saw this Netflix documentary, The Social Dilemma, where Tristan Harris and all the other people, Silicon Valley people who invented the infinite scroll, the like button, who is now the founder of what do you call it? Anyway, he's now. Anyway, all these founders are talking about how they had great intentions, but now it's run away, this thing. So all these social media algorithms are designed to manipulate us in order to extract wealth or extract. No, it's actually to change our behavior. It's not about, that's a key thing I learned from watching The Social Dilemma. It's not about the data, it's about changing our behavior. It's the behavior that they sell advertisers. It's our behavior of buying or clicking or putting our attention to something. Because the data is just the data. It's how they're using the data about us so that they can manipulate us to behave in ways that they want us to behave. It's very powerful. Alright, so I guess that's where this next paragraph came from, is after watching that. I'm just guessing here because, as I said, it's all in the soil and it's hard to pinpoint where things come from. So an easy prey for manipulation. Where am I? Okay, sweeter than sweet. Redder than red. Over and over. Over and over. Doing. Alright. yeah. So maybe because what I just said is now being echoed in the poem for the next hit. Alright, I'm just checking, we're still gone. For the next hit, hyperstimuli of something that could be better. For the next, maybe I'd say the next hyperstimulus, the next hit of hyperstimuli, hoping for something better. Yeah, so this echoes how Osho talks about hope is really one of, it's a very dangerous thing to have, because when I hope, that means I'm not accepting the present, because I'm always hoping that things will change, but change doesn't happen there, it happens here. So it's like how can denying pleasure here train me for enjoying the pleasures in the promised heaven? So if I can enjoy wine here, how can I enjoy wine in heaven? So it's a bit like this hope of always changing, the teleology that there's a linear progression. This seems so good from the outside, but really if I really think about it, there's something dangerous about not accepting, not being in the present. So I think I'm hinting at that with this. So hyper focused. Alright, we become narrower and narrower. So this is echoing John Vervaeke, where he talks about the meaning crisis. Part of the meaning crisis is happening because of the reciprocal narrowing. So addiction is a reciprocal narrowing, whereas meaning or having meaning is a reciprocal opening, participative knowing, whereas being caught in the social media and all this manipulation is narrowing our attention on one thing to click, right? To the point of utter dependence on the easy fix of candy colored pills. So it's echoing a Brave New World, where in utopia you take pills to control emotions, so you're always happy. Tell you what, you don't want to live in a place that's always happy. So it's out now, the Brave New World TV series. I think it's quite well done in my estimation, and yeah, I think there's a possible future heading there where we're now with the DSM, we're just prescribing substances left and right to control our moods. I mean, there's a place for this. Some people need it, but to be utterly dependent on it, just to have a smoother ride instead of enjoying the ups and downs, maybe there's something not too beneficial with that. Puppet strings of a system. Hanging itself with the noose of profit, with the noose of corporeal profit. It's funny that corporations, body corporate, we're trying to put corporeality into something that's really abstract. A corporation is nothing but a permit for a form of organization that is sanctioned by the state. It started with with the monarchy, the East India Company. It started even earlier than that in Holland, the Dutch East Indies. So it's like I'm the king or the queen, and I'm only gonna choose people who will make tea, who will trade in this. They have a monopoly on that, and these are the corporations. That's where all started. But now, in the U.S., they're now treated as, in some instances, they're treated as kind of having personalities, which is kind of interesting. All right, there's that bit. Now, okay, so this will be another vein is serration, another echo of serration. We might have to merge this in the future. Serration of the empirical noun. That cuts away. Immeasurable. That cuts away the immeasurable, unruly, unreliable, unproductive, inefficient, but true and absolute. So this is a dig on the tyranny of measurement. It's like in the empirical world, if you can't measure it, it's not there. But a lot of the beautiful things in life are actually impossible to measure. So and then the next meaning of the next word that you can have is another spelling of serration, which actually comes from alchemy. It's where you soften something. So I'm gonna play with that here. So insertion. So I'm writing this. It might, another thing that popped up in my head now is insurrection. So I might have to play with that later. I'll just put it there. Insurrection, they try to soften our wild freedom. From the darkness of pure creation, pure life, with the grayness of logic, and the whiteness of conformity. Right, I guess there's no need to explain that. There's more. Haha, alright, now we're gonna play on the custody thing. The hindrance of our habeas corpus. So habeas corpus is you have to produce the accused in front of the court. So otherwise, you cannot just put them to jail with a due process. But I'm playing with the corporeality and also in the of Aboriginal people here being in custody, and a lot of them are young people. So I'm gonna play with that. Rite of passage. The hindrance of our habeas corpus, our rites of passage over lands, on lands, our rites of passage on lands over which we had custody for millennia. There, I can't read that. So this the blank enclosure of property. How can you describe enclosure? What would be enclosure? Is it selfish? quite artificial enclosure of land into property, created thievery. With that, really, like, property is just a bundle of rights invented under common law. So prior to that, so once you have private property, then you can have thievery. Prior to that, if everything's held in the commons, there's still thievery, but not to this extent that we have now. Even intellect, even ideas have become intellectual property. So we've gone overboard with this. So I'm having a dig at this. Created thievery. Our young bodies in custody. Playing with custody, custodian of the land. I'm having a lot of double entendre, double meanings here. Has become rites of passage. So the idea is with Terra Nullius, the rites of passage of the people who have been here before the colonizers was taken from them, and in a weird kind of way, because of private property, people get locked up. But in a weird way, that's where while in lockup, while in prison, that's where boys become men. So that's where the rites of passage happen. So rite of passage, rites of passage, another double entendre. So right relationship to unbounding complexity is that indirect direction. To that freedom, free from form. Now free from domination, free domicile, a land space we can call home. To live with dignity, like perennial plants. That grow with the seasons. Crabs by the ocean. Crocs in the river. Roos in the valleys. Emus eating escarpments. Alright, so I think that's where I am at the moment. So let's see. In cars, we travel like atomic. Right, so these are really more of it's kind of headings and ideas, and then I'll refine it by rewriting it and rewriting it. And really, towards the end is where I finesse it. So there's this rhythm in the words and in the images. So now this is just the raw dump of ideas. Yeah, actually I'll need to add this. It's not linked with anything else, but it's a phrase that came to me. Smoke from the burning makes it hard to breathe. So I'm gonna it might it might find a place here, or it might be a separate poem. We'll see about the fires and also about, yeah, fires. It's a very complex thing. It's needed, but also it can kill. So I guess that's it for now. I'll save it. So that's been saved, and yeah, that's the initial dump. As you can see, it's very messy. It's very out there, but then it will refine. It will. It's a bit like this is strange actually showing it, but there's this book by Ed Catmull of Creativity Inc. I think, where they talk about when you come up with a new idea for movie for Pixar, it first starts as an ugly baby. So this is an ugly baby, what I just wrote there. But then the baby will grow into a beautiful, hopefully, into a beautiful being. So I guess I just want to show that. All right. Thank you for tuning in.